time I roll through LA, Hollywood, San Diego, Oceanside, I get nothing but love from the people. I tell you this to tell you Cali like a second home to me. I always have a party. Gentlemen, we are on episode 3 already of the Monkman Show, and glad to have you here again. I'm your host, the Monkman. Today's topic is a very important topic, and it's something that I think is often overlooked not only by society, and it's rejected as a problem by the feminists and the feminazis, but it is also a problem with men, because men tend to make a big joke out of this. And when you see comments on these stories that pop up everywhere, most of the comments are kind of the same thing, and I find it really disappointing. And this is where we as men need to get with the program. So today, what I want to talk about is teachers in the education system and the sexual abuse that they perpetrate on male students, particularly male students. There's female students it happens to as well, but for today's purpose, we're focusing on the male students. Now, obviously, we know about a lot more things today because of the internet and because we can get everything instantly on our news, on our phones, you know what I mean? So that plays a part of what seems like a giant increase. But if you look at the statistics, there actually has been a substantial increase in female teachers abusing male students. I would almost venture to say this has become a mini epidemic. I don't know if they're getting better at catching them or if we just have bigger numbers of them. But this is one of the most ignored problems in society as far as sexual crimes and sexual abuse today, as far as I'm concerned. The feminists are going to tell you that it's not a big problem. And every time you hear about services that are needed and prosecution and everything else, the first thing that they go to is that we need more money for more women's shelters, we need more money for the abuse victims, and we need, more money for this and that. And when they're doing that, they're always talking about women. However, the abuse of boys, teenage and pre-teenage boys in school has become a huge issue. And it's even happened in my state multiple times the past few years. Now, the thing that I look at on this is these are people that are in positions of authority. That's the way the law looks at it as well. What that basically means is these are people that our kids should be able to trust. It's the same thing with like a fireman, a policeman, like a doctor perhaps. But these are people of authority, and these students should be able to trust them. Now, when you look at some of the sexual depravity of some of these women and some of the details come out about the abuse that they're doing to the students, I mean, to me, they sound sick, sicker than the men that do these things. I recently read a story a couple days ago, and I'll try to put some links up on these and some pictures on this video as well for you. But I read a story a couple days ago, and the woman apparently had sex with the underage boy and did it in front of other students. I mean, if a man was to do that, this would make international news and people would be calling to burn him at the stake. The extent that these women will go to today with this depravity is mind-boggling. Some of these women are doing this without their husbands knowing, of course, but they get done and they do what normal manipulative women in these type of situations do when they get caught. Well, it could be any type of situation when they get caught. They try to manipulate and make it as though they're the victim. And we've seen that happen over and over in court. And a large part of the time, these women get off with very minimal sentences. Some of them get probation. Others might get, 13 months. Another one might get 5 years. A lot of times when men do this, they end up with 20, 30, 40-year sentences. So that's a whole nother issue that could be discussed and talked about on a different show. But for today's purpose, all I'm going to say on that is there's clearly, different sentencing guidelines or thoughts from the court system, the judicial system, and I think the men always get the harder end of the stick. So, that being said, I'm going to kind of tear into men here a little bit. Not only is this problem with these depraved women going to cause all kinds of future problems for these boys, and people don't think that boys can be sexually abused or have mental or even physical problems down the road from it. But we know from the research, we know from suicide statistics and things like that, that the sexual abuse does in fact affect our young men. And it does affect them in a very negative way, and perhaps even more so than it does the girls, because society sweeps it under the rug and tends to say, oh, boy, if I was him, I'd sure love to, have, that hot teacher do that to me and teach me everything. Gentlemen, that's the mentality we need to change. I know some of you might think when you read these stories or hear about them that they're funny, but I'm here to tell you they're not. They're not funny at all. This behavior, this delinquent and criminal behavior from these women is no better than what the men do. The one thing that I always want to ask these men when they seem to laugh about this stuff or think it's a joke or say, gee, I wish I had been in that position. If you had a daughter, sir, and she was 12 years old, 13 years old, 11 years old, and you had a teacher that sexually abused her, would you be laughing the same way that you are for this young man? And, there's no way they can answer, yes, I would, because everybody would be telling them what a sick fuck they are, right? So, why do we have this double standard for young men versus girls? That's a good question. And not only has society put this double standard as a whole, and of course feminists are never going to, explore and expose how big of a problem this is, but men, us men, are a big part of this problem. We have no excuse for the type of behavior when we laugh at this, when we make jokes, when we seem to think all of it is not serious. These young men, many of them are very damaged and scarred. They need therapy. Some of them never recover from it. Some of them commit suicide. Some of them go off the deep end and maybe hurt other people. Gentlemen, this is not funny. This is not something to make light of. These young men are being abused by these sexual predator, pedophile women. Point blank, period. And if you support that, or you think that's funny, or you think that's okay behavior, you need to check yourself. You need to look in the fucking mirror. And if you have daughters, you need to think if you would have that same reaction with your preteen daughter. It's not acceptable, period. We as men need to be protecting our young men coming up. Society is already on men's ass for everything. And these young men are coming up. They need us men to be role models for them, to teach them about the pitfalls of society, to teach them about the games and the manipulation that feminists and that entire sector will play on them. They need us to step up. We need to protect this next generation of men because society and women will not do it. So if you think that young men being abused by these women is somehow a sexual fantasy, or it's funny, or, gee, that would have been great for me, you need to look in the mirror, man. On the real, I'm being honest about this. You really need to look at yourself, because you would never say that with your daughter. So why would you make your son disposable like that? Or anybody else's son for that matter? This is a real issue, gentlemen. And it needs attention. And the feminists are not going to give it attention. The media is not going to give it attention and care. It's up to us as men to step up and protect these younger men from abuse and say this is not acceptable any more than it's acceptable towards young women or women in general. Elderly people, people of different nationalities, it doesn't matter. This type of behavior is not acceptable, and it should not be accepted or rejoiced by men thinking that this is some kind of great fantasy, because for a lot of these young men, it fucks them up for life. So think about what you're doing. That's today's topic. I know that's a heavy one, but I want all of you men out there to think twice and use your brain. We need to really stand up and stand out and try to be the leaders that we want our young men to be. If we don't want our young men to be disposable in society, then we have to lead the way. Us older men, MGTOW, red-pilled men, men that know and have experienced the bullshit going on in society and the cold shoulder that men are getting, the stereotypes men are getting, everything else that is making men disposable. We don't want to send the message to our young men that they're disposable when it comes to pedophile female teachers. Okay? Think about that. I'd love to see some comments below. If you've ever had experiences that you feel like sharing, I know that's really personal, or you know somebody, feel free to share them and we can talk about them in the comments. If you don't want to, that's fine too, of course. But this is something that needs to be talked about. It's something that needs to be recognized by men that we are contributing to this delinquent behavior by our responses. It's not acceptable. I will catch you gentlemen on the next show. Let's keep working together, building each other up as men and as a collective, not tearing each other down, and let's protect our young men as well from these sexual predators and pedophiles. See you on the next show.
Always have a party when we there. So you know what? Let's drop this. Yeah. Leave the city life behind me on the interstate wayfinding. Put the pedal to the metal, leaving town cause it's Friday. Drop the top as I head into the center. Cruising toward Cali cause I wanna be a beach bum. Got thoughts of King Sean keeps it, baby, take me there. Game time, I do my damage to a block. Cops try to stop it, but they won't recognize.